And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for tomorrow morning, showing some IFR here from the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, down along the southwest coast, and then a little bit possibly trying to get into the southern Kuskokwim Valley area. Marginal VFR, western Alaska range, and some IFR now showing up along the southern and eastern Kenai Peninsula, mainly the coast up into western Prince William Sound, Whittier, over into Portage, again through Portage Pass, probably IFR for the morning. VFR, much in the interior to the Arctic coast. And for the southeast coast, marginal VFR remains off the coast at least into Friday morning, but then that presses up to the coastline, or at least is forecast to for the afternoon hours. Marginal VFR, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, and increasing here and spreading eastward along the Alaska Range, and may link up here with this area pushing north across eastern Copper River Basin. IFR, western Prince William Sound, maybe into Resurrection Bay. Another patch out here over the southwest part of the state from Togiak northeastward. And an area up over the northern Bering Sea, mostly over the Yukon Delta, back to St. Lawrence Island. And yet some more IFR here, Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians. And for Saturday morning, in a more extensive area of IFR out here over the northern and eastern Bering Sea, mainly along the Yukon Delta coast area, Nunivak Island, St. Matthew Island, Pribilofs, and marginal VFR, Atka Island into the Alaska Peninsula with IFR trying to push up into southern Kodiak Island. Areas of marginal VFR and some areas of IFR, mainly along the North Gulf Coast here. Looks like IFR showing up over the northern panhandle from about Yakutat to just north of Juneau. Stays mostly VFR down to the south and in the central interior, again, all the way up to the Arctic coast. Good VFR. Not too bad over the western Bering Sea as well. Adak westward, VFR. For the afternoon, this persistent zone of IFR stays put here right along the southwest coast, covering Nunivak Island. Otherwise, areas of marginal VFR with more localized IFR across southern Alaska. Becoming more extensive, though, over the northern panhandle here, with marginal VFR trying to overspread even in the southern areas. And it stays pretty good here over the interior, all the way up to just VFR for the Arctic coast, North Slope, right into the Yukon River there. Big area of VFR here, Adak and Atka into the southwest Bering and south central Bering Sea areas. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan. Another VFR day coming up there for the Brooks Range. Those two passes at least. Lake Clark and Merrow, though, marginal VFR, rainy, marginal, windy. Marginal VFR, lowest conditions on the southern entrance. And that same pattern also for Isabel with the same forecast of marginal VFR. And for Mentasta, marginal. And Tanita, marginal VFR, Portage IFR, especially on the eastern entrance. Chilkoot and White, try to squeak out another VFR day there. And for the freezing levels, pretty persistent south to north flow here, pulling some warm air aloft all the way up to the western North Slope and Arctic coast, 2,000 to 4,000 feet up there. Otherwise, 2,000 feet, very close to the Alaska Peninsula and across Kodiak Island. And for icing, with this moisture southerly flow, areas of isolated moderate rime icing over the western part of the state, but a pretty extensive area of moderate rime icing here coming into the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, right on up into Bristol Bay, and a less extensive area just trying to reach the central North Gulf Coast areas. And jet stream here, we've got an upper level ridge at 33,000 feet from the central Arctic coast right on down into the Gulf of Alaska. On the east side of that, northerly wind, 75 knots there, coming in toward the eastern Brooks Range, and 90 to 105 knots just east of the Panhandle there. And out to the west, the opposite flow, south to north here, 85 to 100 knots. 9,000 feet, again, south to north flow all the way up into the Chukchi Sea and Arctic Ocean there. 65 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, actually pretty uniform speed-wise, 60 to 65 knots all along that area. High pressure over the eastern part of the state and lighter northerly winds here across the Yukon, trying down into the Panhandle. 3,000-foot winds. Pretty light for the southeast coast, central eastern interior, but notice these 50-knot easterlies there for the eastern Arctic coast. And again, pretty strong southerly flow here over the western part of the state, anywhere from 55 to 65 knots. And this low coming northward has even stronger winds with that. And for turbulence, considerable moderate turbulence here. All of the western part of the state, mostly inland, Yukon Delta, a little smoother in the afternoon, but moderate turbulence here right on into Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range extending all the way out to Atka Island. Also, considerable moderate turbulence for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, especially for smaller aircraft.